We're going to be talking about L&D resources. This is part 2. Last week, if some of you may have been in, you might recall we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about communities, websites, and something else. I can't recall exactly what it was. But last week, a different set of L&D resources. This morning, we're going to be talking about blogs, podcasts, and newsletters, which has been a really, really interesting sort of research project for me, because I really haven't looked at a lot of these new, like sort of that type of media in the L&D space in a while. And going through it, there is some really interesting information to be gleaned from this one. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I just want to mention real quick before we get started, if you haven't been attending any of the certificates or certifications playlist episodes, sign up and check those out. This last week, we had Deidre Welcome in, who was talking about she has a handful of certifications, L&D certifications that she's gotten for in her career. And I wanted to talk with her about the value of all those and what that process was like and why she has so many. And that was such a good episode for me that I'm actually looking at getting certifications myself. So I guess in a way, this is a warning. Be careful. If you log into that particular episode, you might actually formally start pursuing more professional development opportunities. Good morning, Betty. Thanks for coming in this morning. And we've got 2 more episodes in that playlist coming up next week. Alex Salas, chapter president in Florida for ATD. He's going to be talking about CPLPs moving over to the CPTDs and what all that's about. And many of you probably know Alex is dynamic, super fantastic. He was a guest of Andrew Hughes in December on TLD Cast. And he is super charismatic, great to talk to. I'm sure you'll enjoy that episode. And then wrapping up this series, we're actually extending it into March because I was able to get Matt Pierce in, and I wanted him to talk about certifications that were kind of outside a little bit of, or in between L&D, which is the TechSmith certifications that you get through their academy, and he's responsible for the academy. And so I wanted him to come in and just discuss that and sort of talk about maybe some of the overlaps and why it might be important to get certifications in, say, Camtasia or any of the other TechSmith products that are available. And then for March, first time ever, I pretty much have the March playlist all ready to go. It's going to be on storytelling, and I am so excited about the guests that we have on there. Just because I'm a big storytelling fan, and we're going to be starting that. I forget when the first episode is. I'll have the Crowdcast instance available this weekend, but I know we're opening it up with Rance Green, who is releasing a book called Yes, Mark. Yeah, scenario-based training is also cool. But Rance Green has a book coming out called Instructional Storytelling Design, and we have. Other guest Christy Tucker is coming back to talk about scenario-based learning, and a few other guests. We're talking improv, we're talking comedy. March is going to be fun, so looking forward to that. And just one last other episode that we have coming up that I wanted to throw out there. Next week, I've got Rob Penn of Suddenly Smart coming in. I'm going to start doing some series with some vendors. Just because when I was coming up in the industry, really, like when I would go to conference expos and stuff, and even, just going into sessions, a lot of where I got some of the best information was from the vendors. And I think that in our space, there is kind of, we have a contentious relationship with kind of the vendor community. And, you don't want to get pitched at all the time about, LMSs or whatever products, but these guys know their stuff. They know their stuff. They're passionate enough about L&D to actually build a product. And I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for anyone that was willing to build a business around an L&D product. Just as long as their heart was in it. And Rob Penn is one of those guys. I met him like early 2000s. He was one of the first exhibitors I think the eLearning Guild ever had at their events. And I saw him just this last fall, and I'm like, Rob, dude, I got to get you onto the show. You've been doing this for like 20 years. This is amazing. So Rob Penn from Suddenly Smart, and you got to check out his authoring tool. It's been around for a really long time, and he knows his stuff. And so with that, Betty says, if you're looking for a great vendor to feature, I recommend Speckit or Spicket. Sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly. All right, I'll keep that in mind. I actually have an ongoing list. And these vendor these vendor features, they're not like sponsored or anything like that. I'm doing it completely independently, which is one of the beauties of having a community like this, where I'm not like being paid to do any of this stuff at all. So I'm bringing in people that that are purely doing it for the passion of it. Oh, Salesforce training. There you go. Speaking of certifications, sorry, Betty is typing. She wrote Salesforce training in the chat, which I suspect relates to Speckit. And yeah, Salesforce training is huge nowadays. I know a lot of folks that are going after Salesforce certifications, and you could actually have a pretty good lifestyle if you've got a lot of that knowledge, which I have a little bit of, and it's been very, very helpful. So with that, I'm going to move into our discussion. So last night, I just decided to dump all my notes into a blog post. Here's a link to it in chat. It's I'll pretty up the page later. I just wanted to have a list of stuff for us to talk about. Last week I had posted a shared document or something like that. I can't remember where I posted it, but I'm just going to put this on the side for this one. Hey, John, good morning. So let's just start with blogs. And if you guys want, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just share this page. I am going to share this. Let me get this to another window and open up my share screen. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. Screen sharing the page on the TLDC website. And so the blog thing. I'm just curious if you guys could, maybe respond in chat. Do any of you actually subscribe to any blogs anymore, or do you regularly look for blogs to browse to? Any must-read blogs that you have on a regular basis? And the reason I ask that is because I used to read a lot of blogs, and I've migrated most of my reading that way. Oh yeah, there you go. Betty's saying that Train Like a Champion and Mark Manson. That's great to hear, because I have done a lot of what my reading now is pretty much, I focus on using Medium, which I pay a regular subscription for, and I have the app on my iPad and my phone, and on desktop as well. But I didn't realize that I've evolved to sort of doing that. But that's where I go to get my blog type of content. And so, not knowing that and getting into preparing for this podcast, I started looking around, and I noticed that, here we are. Here, look, here's some of the blogs that are still active and still have things going. Mark is posting, Kathy Moore's post. Oh, Tom. Hey, welcome back, Tom. Tom is posting about Mike Taylor's. I should have put Mike Taylor's on there. Okay. Thank you for listing that. I should have had Mike Taylor's on there. But I was kind of disappointed to find a lot of the L&D blogs that I used to go to on a regular basis are not that active anymore. And I think that's just how things are evolving. A lot of folks are really more focused on the short form content, maybe posting on social media, posting on LinkedIn, things like that. So at least what I have in front of us are sort of a list of some of the ones that I have gone to in the past and that I still I still look to. And and of course, yes, Betty, I will add, if you ask Betty, thanks for posting that. I really appreciate it. Actually, drop the URL if you can, and it'll make it easier for me to add that in. And that'll be great. I love it. So here's my list of blogs. And the first one that I will, if I see a link to this one. I don't subscribe to it, but if I see an article linked to Julian Stodd's blog, I will read that on a regular basis. His blog has actually brought me to tears at one point when he recently his son was born, and he wrote such a touching, compelling sort of post about having a newborn that it was just absolutely just emotionally so rich, and he's an incredible writer and so articulate. So Julian Stott is one blog that I highly recommend in the L&D space. And another person, and I have him listed twice, Christopher Bergeron. And Christopher is somebody, he's actually a subscriber on TLDC, a paid subscriber, and he releases content on a regular basis. And he's just like a machine. And the stuff that he does is really, really, really interesting. If you guys haven't checked him out, you should, check out Christopher. He's, you might see him regularly post on LinkedIn. He's somebody that just loves to share, and he's so active, and he's a really compelling person. I'd love to have him on a guest again on TLDC. So look forward to that. Of course, Connie Malamud. She is a total rock star as far as I say, like web media, new media is concerned. The e-learning coach, definitely, you should check out Connie's website. She's always got just really, really great posts. In fact, I was referencing her stuff for this particular episode. I mean, I was going to her website for references for this episode on a pretty regular basis. Clark Quinn from LearnLits, gotta love Clark. He's just, he has just been putting out, posting just for years and years, and he's absolutely brilliant. So Clark Quinn is another one. Harold, and I don't remember how to pronounce his last name, Jarchi. Oh, I'm sorry that link isn't active on the post, but I'll make sure that it's working. Check him out. Harold is, I think Harold is. Was he in the Internet Time Alliance? I might be thinking of Charles Jennings. But anyway, Harold, brilliant man. I believe he's from the UK. And speaking of somebody else, Stephen Downs, who I've met in the past, he is also from the UK. Those are both brilliant blogs, Harold and Stephen. And then, of course, you got Christopher Pappas from eLearning Industry, who regularly puts out content. Some of his posts are sponsored. I can't say that, I'm not being critical of that, but you sort of have to watch for stuff like that because, eLearningIndustry.com is fully known for is also just a content marketing vehicle. So, but he does have some great stuff on a fairly regular basis. And then Craig Weiss. I don't know if you guys know about Craig. He's definitely got a voice in the L&D space, and he's kind of an LMS sort of expert, and that's a good place to go if you're actually, if he is any content on the LMS that you're using, you should check it out because he does some great reviews on that stuff. And then, of course, one of my favorite people, Christy Tucker, who we recently had as a guest for opening up our certificates playlist. She is constantly putting out great content on her blog on a regular basis. And so with that, I'm going to go back. Thomas Harrell, good morning. Thanks for coming in. Training Industries blog, of course. Yeah, I do go there on a regular basis. I should have added that. I was kind of looking more for individual people. So I didn't really post, sort of industry blogs, but yeah, Training Industry, Biz Library, and James Clear. That's a good one. I'm going to have to check that out. Oh, New Obsession. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks for posting that. And okay, so if you guys have any other blogs to add, please, I'll add them to the list. Thomas, I'm going to add yours. Of course, Betty, you're going to get in there, and we'll just have this list to check out. And that's sort of the thing. And, moving into the next category, into podcasts, that's something that I was really sort of considering, is that how much media do you actually even need? Like, where do you find the time to really go through this stuff? And I think that's one of the reasons why maybe blogs have somewhat lost their relevance for some people, is because there's just so much going on, right? There's so much media, and moving into podcasts, that it was almost sort of overwhelming getting into this. And I didn't realize there were so many podcasts, and and what I linked to in the in the podcast section of that of this post that you can see on screen. I'm going to just open this in a new tab. Was Training Industries listing, which is actually Sam Rogers' listing. And a lot of you may know Sam Rogers, who was a regular on TLDC, used to be a regular host on TLDC. He put together this incredible list, and Training Industry did a great job of posting everybody's little icons and stuff on here. This is really like too much for me to go through, and because there are so many. I'm glad to see that TLDC's on this list. I was a little worried when I was going through it, but it's in alphabetical order, and I'm glad that we're on there. But check out that list. Here, I am going to just link it, and shout out to Sam for actually putting this together. There's a spreadsheet available too for this one if you guys wanted to download it in Excel. But I would love to hear what your guys' feedback on these podcasts are. Now, Thomas is saying loves Marie Forleo, and he linked in there. And Betty's saying Jenna Kutcher, and so I'm gonna ask you. I want to talk about this and just give this some time. One, I want to see if maybe Betty, Thomas, or anybody else might want to come on screen and just talk a little bit about what their podcast habits are and how you listen to podcasts. Because how do you sort through a list like this? What I'm going to do personally, okay, let me tell you what my habits are. All day, I do a lot of production work for a learning company, and I basically get to sit down at my stand at my standing desk, depending upon whether or not I'm using my stool, and put on my headphones and just go. And that means I pretty much get to listen to podcasts almost all day. And I would say that my podcast to music ratio is about 70% podcast, 30% like music. And I will listen to either depending upon what I'm doing. I will listen to music if I'm doing something that's really, really so that I need a lot of focus on, or I won't listen to anything at all. Or I listen to podcasts if I'm just like doing some coding and I can just like go through and just clean things up or build whatever. I'm really, really lucky that way. But I don't listen to many L&D, or I would say I probably don't really listen to any other to any other podcast other than TLDC, because I like to just check in on myself every once in a while. I listen to productivity. I listen to, like minimalism. I listen to sports stuff, and I actually listen to comedy, like Comedy Bang Bang, which I just like being able to laugh while I'm working. So, if any of you guys are interested in coming in, I would love to just sort of like hear, on screen what your podcast habits are, if you are a podcast listener, because that's a fascinating thing to me. Like Thomas is saying, his is easy. His morning and evening work commute is 1 hour to 1 hour and 45 minutes. Oh yeah, Josh is saying it's pretty exciting to jump in late and see his logo on there. Josh, which one is yours? Let's see. Oh, DIY narrator. Okay, awesome. Yeah. And Alan, I listen to podcasts while commuting. Used to listen more when I rode the bus. And so, yeah. I mean, go ahead and post in chat like what your podcast listening habits are. And maybe, some of our listeners or some of the folks in the live show now are not regular podcast listeners. I'd like to hear sort of your experience or what you think of podcasts, like why you might not listen to them. Are there too many out there, or you just don't have time? I'd love to hear it. So let me know. Just jump, if you're interested in coming up. Now, let's go through some of these podcasts, and you guys, if you can, just give me a rundown a little bit of what you think about them. Now, Josh is saying I get about 30 to 45 minutes a day listening during the dog walk, business, L&D, and some entertainment on rotation. And Betty saying I listen in the car and in the airport. I like to hear something interesting, and I like to hear something that makes me laugh. Yeah, totally. Yeah, Thomas says, I also listen to the ones I've been on. And Alan saying some L&D podcasts that focus on the storytelling aspect. I don't know what boats means, Alan. True crime podcast. Totally. And it's a form of, I think that, as much as I love the productivity podcast that I listen to, based on a true story. Boats is based on a true story. A lot of the podcasts that I listen to tend to really kind of be more because I want entertainment while I'm working. And it sometimes, I will be cracking up, and I feel a little guilty about enjoying myself so much during my workday. There, I said it. All right. So let me go through some of these ones. The Business of Learning by Training Industry. I haven't listened to that one. It's at the top of the list. Oh, and we're on the trainingindustry.com website. Imagine that. But The Business of E-Learning, I do get their newsletter. I'll be talking about that later. Their newsletter is, I like reading that. It's kind of a little bit sort of over my head, just looking at all the mergers and acquisitions and stuff that they send on a regular basis, but I do check it out. Become an Idol. That one is, what is it? It is Dr. Robin Sargent, I would say. It's produced by Idol Courses. It's listed there, but I've heard a lot about Idol. I haven't had much experience other than having Robin on the show with Rubina Hawani, but I'm going to have to check that one out. Beyond L&D. Anybody know about that one? The Beyond L&D podcast is a monthly podcast produced by NorthPass that discusses how modern teams use enterprise learning to drive business performance. That sounds pretty LinkedIn-y. And I'm going to check out all of these. I'm actually going to listen to every single one. I'm going to check out one episode. Let's see. Build Your Talent Stack. Yishan Chan, bi-weekly, a podcast that explores creative ways to learn, build future skills, and shape a career in the future of work. Love it. That doesn't sound specifically like an L&D one, but that sounds like something that I would like to listen to. I'm really into future of work stuff. Compelling. And then, of course, there's Mike Simmons and Catalyst Sale. Yay. Mike is really, really sales focused. I'm sure most of you know who Mike is, but, and he has had the episodes I've listened to are always well done, formatted incredibly well. And Mike is always just super passionate about what he does. So kudos to Mike for being on this list. Customer Education Lab. So CE Lab. That sounds like more of an academic one. It says CE Lab's mission is to explore how to build customer education programs, experiment with new approaches, and exterminate the myths and bad advice that stop growth dead in its tracks. So maybe not academic. Anybody? Let's see. Let me read some of the comments here. Let's see. Oh, Thomas posted a link for a Biz Library one. I'm not sure if you were a guest on that one, Thomas. And Invest Human podcast, Thomas is adding. That is a human performance, workplace learning, and OD focus, but branches out from time to time. Sounds great. I'm going to add that. Good morning, Dan. Thanks for coming in. And let's see. Chief Learning Officer podcast. Oh, I'd love to hear if you guys have listened to this one. I'm going to have to check that out. I wonder if, that's from CLO Magazine. Let's see how I'm going to be definitely tuning in to see what the quality is like for that one and who the guests are. And that's the other thing is, all of these have to be covering like a huge swath of the industry. So this is a great resource for that if you wanted to get, just listening to some of these podcasts, if you just wanted to get an overview of what is going on in the world of L&D. The CIPD podcast. That's a monthly one produced by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. And I've heard of CIPD. I haven't really researched them. Gonna have to check that out. Dear Instructional Designer with Kristen Anthony. I've definitely listened to a few episodes from her. We've had Kristen on the show before. I didn't look to see I know she releases these weekly, it says. But I think from somebody who is a passionate practitioner's perspective, Kristen's podcast is a really, really good listen. And then Josh, DIY narrator. Narrating your e-learning is about more than just delivering information. It's about engaging your learners. Josh, we're going to have you on as a guest. That sounds like I'll take a listen to your podcast today when I'm when I'm at work. And then, of course, Connie's e-learning coach podcast, which I have listened to episodes in the past. They're great. You know, I mean, Connie just always has great information. So I would recommend, you know, checking everything Connie out, because she is totally an industry sort of pillar. First time facilitator. Wow. Have not listened to that one. That sounds really, really interesting for the right folks. And I'm glad that one's on this list. That one's going to be kind of a cool browse. Funny ideas, learning and development with humor. Look at that, Julie Flower. Anyone listen to that one? That one looks really, really cool. And Thomas just posted a link to ATD's podcasts. He says he's only listened to a few from ATD, but it's another source. Let's see. Good Practice. Yeah, that's a great one. I forget what the fella's names from Good Practice are, but those guys have a good one. It always seems like in the UK, the quality of podcasts from the UK are always like consistently good. You know, so Good Practice. Definitely could recommend that one, because I've listened to it before. Here's a vendor one from Cornerstone On Demand, HR Labs. And then, of course, good old Brent and Chris Van Wingerden from Domino, instructional designers in offices drinking coffee. They do their thing over there. As many of you guys know, Brent was one of the founders of TLDC. I've tuned into an episode like a long time ago, but I haven't done it in a while. But yeah, they do a weekly thing, and they release their similar to what we do here. They release their recordings, their Crowdcast recordings in a podcast format. And of course, Kara North, instructional redesign. That's a great one. You know, Kara and Joseph are so great at putting these together. They're well produced. I do listen to those episodes when they do come up. Yeah, Kara North is the bomb. Thanks to Stan. Kineo, Stream of Thoughts. I haven't listened to that one. Gonna definitely that one will be sort of probably on my list today. And the reason why is because I've always been a big fan of Cami Bean from Kineo. So I'm gonna be looking at that one today. Yeah, I know, Thomas. These are a lot of podcasts, and that's what I'm saying. It's a thing with, you know, like I was so glad I found this list, because once I started trying to pull together a list, I'm like, there's a lot of L&D podcasts out there. And then I'm like, oh, wait, Sam made this and it's on Training Industry. How perfect. Learning at Large by Elucidate. Another vendor sponsored one, host Simon Greeny. So add that one to your list if you're interested. Leading Learning. A weekly podcast produced by Jeff Cobb and Celissa Steele for leaders and aspiring leaders in the business of lifelong learning, continuing education, and professional development. I'm up for that. Let's see. L&D Learning and Development Stories podcast. Look at that. Produced by Experiential Communications. Let's see. All right, Thomas, thanks for coming in. Learning and Development in Transition by Wired Roots. I'm going to just start going through these a little more quickly. Learning is the New Working by the Learning Futures Group. For some reason, I feel like I've heard of that one. I'm going to have to check that out. That is kind of a compelling title, too. Learning is the New Working. Learning Tech Talks, produced by Learning Sharks. Learning to Go, Margie. She's great. I don't know if you guys have listened to Margie's podcast in the past, but she has been on the broadcast a few times. She's spoken at TLDC events. Margie is absolutely brilliant on the neuroscience side of things. If you are into that, you know, learning and neuroscience, I would definitely give that one a look. Learning Uncut, produced by Learning Experts. Oh, that's a brand, Learning Experts. Haven't checked that one out. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Learn, Unlearn, Relearn, Repeat. Learning While Working by Sprout Labs. Sprout Labs always puts out interesting stuff. I'm going to have to check that one out. Sorry, I'm reviewing this. I didn't review it in detail in the past, so some of these are pretty compelling to me. Here's LMS Cast by Lifter LMS. There you go. And you know, and a lot of people that, like product owners are building out, podcasts, which is a great marketing idea. So that might be an interesting one to listen to. Mindchip speaks with some of the best people in the industry to discuss what shapes them and their thoughts. Yeah, it's a big list, Josh. And so even like being on this list, Josh, I'm wondering what that must sort of feel like, being as a part of like this huge list of L&D, sort of media sources. It's, not that it's like you need to be competitive or anything, but it just sort of tells you that the landscape is so huge, just even to be able to have a piece of it is, it's kind of a, it's a gift to be able to do it. And you really do kind of have to be passionate about what you're talking about to be able to, to exist within this space. And Dan is asking whether or not leading learning was talked about. Let's see, it was. I thought, yeah, it was up here, leading learning, and that's great. If that's a recommendation, I'll definitely take it. And I'm going to go back through all of this. I'm going to download the chat text, and I'm going to go through a lot of the episodes that you guys post first. Anna's mentioning that podcasting is meant to be growing and huge in all predictions, and it is. And quite frankly, that's where, if there's one place that I'm finding TLDC really sort of sticking, it's in the podcast space. Since we started posting our broadcasts on a regular basis in 2017, and right now, maybe not from a larger podcast perspective that this is a lot of downloads, but we've had over 40,000 downloads. I'm sort of impressed with it, and I get regular emails from podcast listeners, that don't participate in the live show, that don't really know much about TLDC at all, but that have questions about the subject matter. And shout out to Melissa, who just sent me an email about, was actually because I posted the wrong recording on something, and she sent me an email to tell me that I needed to fix that, and also that she was a big fan of J-Rock, which was very cool. It's great to get emails like that from from listeners. But yeah, and it's still growing. I mean, when I look at the analytics for TLDC's podcast, it's just like it's just going up. And you're right. None of the gamification podcasts are listed. And this is just a list. If you're just joining us, this list is something that Sam Rogers put together, and it's on the Training Industry website. I didn't count how many podcasts are on this list, but we're just running through them real quick. If you have any gamification and learning ones, please feel free to post it. And there you go. Dan has just posted one from Tiagi. Truth and Learning, a new podcast. Tiagi is one of the funniest people in L&D. I have met him a few times, and he's one of those guys that is, I don't want to say uncomfortably funny, but when you're in a professional situation and he's making you laugh as much as you end up laughing, it does get a little uncomfortable because you're kind of almost guffawing because he's so funny. And Josh is saying in chat, it was a surprise to be included in this list, especially since I have a pretty small niche in just focusing on narration, but it's amazing to be in the company. Lots of folks he respects on this list. Yeah. And let me just continue on. Let's see. Learning while working. We did that one. Mindchip. Mosby Learning. Performance Matters. 5 moments, produced by 5 Moments in Need. Yeah. A lot of these I have never heard before. Pod Learn Adventure. Oh, this is another one by Kineo. A short monthly jaunt produced by Kineo. I'm going to have to check that one out. Sales Enablement Pro by Shauna Sumaoang. Sales enablement is constantly evolving space. Yeah, it is. And that's something that Mike Simmons talks a lot about. It's interesting to sort of see that there are a couple sales focused podcasts listed in this L&D in this L&D list. Oh, there's the Biz Library podcast. And the e-learning guys, those guys are great. David Charney, who actually has been who has been in TLDC in the audience and as a guest, and then I can't remember how to pronounce next name, but That is actually a really good one. That if you guys need an e-learning related podcast, that's a good one to go to. Leadership 480. I'm just going to go through some of these. Look at this, the Learning and Development Podcast. This is a topical podcast show for L&D professionals produced by Loop. David James is discussing and debating topics. Okay, let's check it out. The E-Learning Geeks. Dana Allen Cock, Bob Gerard, Jake Gittleson. So you learn so much. I have no idea who any of these people are. And I can't wait to find out. The Learning Hack. Let's see. I'm just going to go through Learning Hook because we're just on L's. The Lounge. Oh, of course. Good old Jack. I have listened to a few episodes of Jack's podcast. This is one of those nice ones, and I'm just giving this one kind of as a shout out to Jack because I have listened to her podcast, like doing stuff like gardening, or if I'm just like working on whatever. It's a nice one to listen to in the background. The Online Course Coach, Jeff Long, we've had him on. I have actually listened to an episode or two of his, and those are really, really good. Talent Development Hot Seat. Let's see, who's that one? Andy Storch. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Actually, I think I'm supposed to get back to Andy. We wanted to have him on as a guest. Talented Learning Show. John Lay. Oh yeah, John Lay. I haven't listened to this podcast either. And John Lay has a pretty solid profile on social media. So I should check that one out. I'm going to go back to chat real quick. I'm going to read off Ann Coppins. Professor Game by Rob Alvarez is a good one. And she says, I have a podcast called A Question of Gamification, not just about learning, but always on games or gamifications. Hey, post the link to that one, Ann. Let's get you on here. I would love to listen to your podcast. Tom, thanks for posting this one. 5 Moments of Need with Conrad and Bob. Bob and Con, they have a podcast. That'd be great to listen to. Those two are like two of the most brilliant people in the industry. Post the link to that one. And let's see. Alan is saying he's going to have to change his listening habits at work. Less music, more podcasts. That's what's happened to me. I used to listen to music all the time. And then I really started to get into podcasts specifically because, and it's really helped that I have a Spotify subscription. So that's basically where I get the bulk of my podcasts. Anna's saying that she also listens to the Gamification Quest podcast by Monica Cornetti. And for her own game design geekery, she loves the Board Game Design Lab. Oh, that sounds fascinating. And Dan is mentioning I have to look for Jonathan Peters as well. And love to see that. Jonathan looks like he speaks on gamification. And there you go, performancematters.podbean.com. Thanks, Tom, for posting that. And Josh is posting Betty's podcast link. And there we go. What do we got left here? Good old TLD cast. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Hope you enjoy what we do. It's I have a lot of fun doing this, and really what TLDC for me, my driving sort of passion is to try to connect people and just try to stay curious. That is the main thing. And for me, this is really, a lot of it is an exploration into this space and into new media. And I've just been in L&D for so long. I just want to continue watching it evolve and helping support other people in it. And I hope that you guys have seen my journey so far. And hopefully we're just continuing to move in the right direction. I definitely feel like I'm kind of a one-man shop doing this, but it's a lot of fun. I don't mind at all getting up early in the morning Pacific time and jumping in to do a broadcast. So Trainer Tools with John Tomlinson, Training Insights with Training Magazine. Haven't listened to this one. Looks like Ottawa-based writer, audio producer Kevin McGowan in partner with Training Magazine. Great. Of course, Joe Cook and the Training Journal podcast. Well, Joe is no longer with Training Journal, but I actually have never listened to this podcast, so I'll have to give this one a listen. I've got a lot of stuff to listen to today. Here's one produced by Abby Brown and Tim Green, Dr. Abby Brown and Dr. Tim Green. Professors of instructional design and educational technology share their observations every 2 weeks in this podcast. That sounds fascinating. And then, of course, there is Joe's at Light Bulb Moment. Joe is she is one of my favorites out there for virtual classroom stuff, and she is just always so pleasant, professional. Highly recommend hers. So let's see. I'm gonna go back to chat and read a little bit about that, and then we'll do a jaunt into sort of newsletters, which is actually a passion of mine. So I can't wait to do that. But we won't spend too much time with newsletters. Alan is saying that EDM and music soundtracks are what he listens to at work currently. I do like to listen to soundtracks at work. I'd love to hear what you guys typically like to listen to at work, but soundtracks, actually, sometimes I almost feel like I'm watching the movie when I listen to soundtracks. So that's really, really fun. Yeah. And Helen is also asking what your podcast, manager preferences are, like Spotify, iTunes. And like I mentioned earlier, Spotify is my big one. I do listen to, sometimes I will go to Google and I will listen to Google Cast. I'm not, I don't have an iPhone. I have a Pixel. So I'm in the Android ecosystem, but I will I will sometimes do that. If I'm on my MacBook, occasionally I do have a couple podcasts that are, that I subscribe to with Apple on my MacBook, and I'll listen to those occasionally. I can't remember what they are right now, which goes to show that how often I listen to them. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Josh is saying he likes Pocket Casts. Deborah is saying she uses Podcast Addict. And let's see. Alan says he doesn't have access to iTunes at work. And doesn't know of a good podcast manager that could be used online for PC. If you do have Spotify, give it a try. It actually has been really good for me. I found that there were some podcasts that were not being released to Spotify, but I think that's changing. And when I look at, and I do get like some podcast industry, I get one podcast industry newsletter, and Apple by far is the big one, like iTunes or the Apple podcast delivery sort of network is the major one out there, but Spotify is in second place and is catching up quickly. Let's see. Dan is asking if anyone is going to Training 2020 next week. I'd love to hear about that too. That's an event that I've never been to. If you are, go ahead and just post in chat. And let's see. And Alan is posting that he's been listening to spaghetti Western soundtracks lately on YouTube. That's great. That's actually very, very cool. At my work, I work with a bunch of geeks at O'Reilly Media, and we actually have on our Slack work group, we have a music channel that people regularly post music recommendations on, and that is a lot of fun to have. All right, so that's the podcast thing, you guys. Let's move into newsletters. Now, do this real quick. Okay, so with newsletters, that is where I get most of my, I would say most of my L&D content, most of my web content. I really rely on newsletters. I don't know if any of you guys do, but it's a big thing for me. I don't know if you guys read the TLDC newsletter, but I do put as much time as I can into it, and that newsletter is actually just a result of having other newsletters come in that I read on a regular basis. So I did go out and look for industry newsletters to see, like, what is out there that is worth subscribing to. And honestly, I don't see a lot. And if you guys have any L&D newsletters that you really rely on getting, please post them, because I would love to have that come into my inbox on a regular basis. That's kind of, my primary resource for information. Is really kind of starts on my inbox. But eLearning Insider from the eLearning Guild is one that goes out on a regular basis. I don't know if it really has that much value. I know by design, a lot of it is pretty much just to pitch guild events. But I looked at it recently, and it looks nice. Don't know how much value it has. I'm not trying to be critical. I used to actually build that newsletter every week in Word, but that one is out there. If you guys are interested in Guild news, that's a good one to get. I did subscribe to Learning Solutions Magazine's newsletter, but I never got it. So I don't know if that's still coming or what. I should hit up somebody over there. But used to build that one too, and that one would link directly to articles posted on Learning Solutions Magazine, which does have quite a the content on there is really, really good. It's a lot of it is really long form. So most of the time I don't really have time to read stuff that is, as long as some of those articles are, but there's some good content. Online Learning Weekly with Scott Cooper is one of the few that I get in that is L&D related that I like, that I haven't unsubscribed from. And that's really what tells you like whether or not a newsletter is something worth your time, is whether or not you're going to subscribe or unsubscribe to it. But I've been subscribed to his for I think a couple of years now. And Scott Cooper is somebody that we've had on TLD Cast, and I believe, let's see, I think he works for Go One, and is based out of Australia now. Used to be in the Bay Area, Northern California. Now, those are really the only two. You guys got any newsletters you want to pitch? Please post. I'd love to see them. I do get Training Industries newsletters on a regular basis. And I should have posted a link to them there. Maybe I did down below. No, I didn't. But I don't know how much I actually read Training Industries. I didn't sign up to ATDs because I have in the past, and then all of a sudden I started getting hit by all kinds of other, third party how did they get my email address? It's like, oh, I just signed up for to one of ATD's newsletters, so maybe that's how all of a sudden I'm getting all this other new email. But so that's not on this list. But I will tell you, and as we wrap up, this is kind of part of my go-to group. I didn't release all of them. I didn't post all of them, but this is kind of the core of like where I look for a lot of content that just keeps me kind of thinking about the industry and just technology and education and business and just the future of work. All of these things sort of are like flying around in my head on a regular basis. One of my favorites is TLDR. If you're at all a techie and you're interested in what's happening with technology and kind of even just software programming, just anything like that, if you're geeky, TLDR is a great one. And those guys, it's, you just get it like every day, and there's information that's worth looking at in there every day. Not L&D related necessarily, but if you are, there are trends that are listed in there that can affect L&D. It's worth checking out. Creative Mornings is one of my favorite newsletters. I steal stuff from them all the time. They always have interesting links. And then they, if you're not familiar with them, they have regular events, free events in different cities. I would love to like model that, somehow for L&D, but we don't have a big enough audience. But it's such an interesting place to go for video content and just posts and stuff. So check out Creative Mornings. For the Interested is a newsletter that I also subscribe to. I can't remember his name. I want to say it's Josh Hunt, but that is a really good one. And he has posted articles in his newsletter and on his website that have literally kind of just changed my life. A lot of it is productivity related. Some of it is for entrepreneurs. Some of it is just for social media. Some of it is just to keep yourself organized. It's a really, really good one to have. And then of course, just the Product Hunt newsletter. I'm definitely a geek at, a geek at heart. Product Hunt is a place that I go to on a regular basis just to find something to play around with. And I'm not sure if you guys aren't, familiar with Product Hunt at all. It's just somewhere that basically posts about technology sort of product offerings like apps and websites and things, and people can vote them up. There's always something interesting to find in there. If you guys are ever building anything or are looking for inspiration or ideas about things, go to Product Hunt. Check it out. It's worth looking at. The Brave Souls newsletter with Katika Roy. Now, Katika is somebody who talks a lot about diversity and inclusion and just some of those things that, that that kind of need to be discussed in the world, and a lot of it is related to HR. I do like her newsletter. She always has some very thoughtful, compelling stuff to say, and I do believe that a lot of it can be related to L&D, but mostly on the HR side. Worth checking out if that's something that interests you at all. Now, the O'Reilly Next Economy newsletter. This is one of the best kept secrets in the universe, and of course, as you guys know, I probably say it too much. I work there at O'Reilly. I love this newsletter. It actually is partially written by it's written by Tim O'Reilly and Bess, and I help build it, and I don't pull any content for it, but every time I read it, I'm absolutely fascinated. It talks about basically the intersection between technology and business and how it's affecting society, and a variety of other things. Subscribe to that one just because every time I read it, I feel like I get a little bit smarter. It's not L&D related. It can have some content occasionally about learning in there, but mostly it is just has relevant information. It's just fascinating. And then, of course, this is Tim Ferriss's newsletter. I kind of almost overlooked it because I'm just so used to it being a part of my life. But check out Tim Ferriss, who many of you know, 4-Hour Workweek and entrepreneur. Check out his newsletter. And thanks for coming in, Dan. We just want to mention real quick. Dan was saying that at Training 2020, he's going to be presenting a session on the anatomy of a video-based simulation. Dan is absolutely an amazing presenter. Go check him out if you're going to be there. And let's see. Mark is posting. Tim has some interesting podcast interviews, not training related, but interesting perspectives on different topics. Yes, Tim Ferriss has an amazing podcast. It's one of the most popular podcasts out there, right? It's probably like him and that Burley guy. I can't remember what his name is. He's like the fighter guy. I can't remember what he's I'm kind of glad that I forgot his name, but Tim is up there as like one of the most popular podcasts like in the world, and it's definitely worth a listen. If you see anything with Tim and a guest that you might be interested in learning more about, give it a listen. And with that, let's see. It's almost 8 a.m. Pacific time, so I'm going to wrap it up. And I want to thank you guys again for coming in, sharing resources. This is going to be a lot to add to this page. I'll make it a little prettier, add some pictures. Tom, thanks again for popping in. And I need some ideas for future community discussions. I want you guys to really kind of look at TLDC and these discussions, especially as a kind of a platform for getting questions answered. That's pretty much how I'm looking at all of the TLD casts. Is just the best resource in the world is each other. That's the way that I look at things. And so I love being able to be a part of community because I can reach out and find answers to questions I have through people that I'm connected with. And so TLDC is really meant to be a kind of a conduit. And if you guys are interested in hosting a show on TLDC, if you guys are interested in just being a guest, anything like that, reach out to me, Luis at tldc.us. I will I'll get back to you, and keep an eye on our schedule. Storytelling playlist again next month. Going to be amazing. I have the guests all lined up. I'll create the instance for it this weekend so you can sign up. You guys are going to love it. I mean, we have Sarah Ann Houghton, I think her last name is, who's doing one on, she's an improv comedian in New York City, and she's doing one on, she's also an instructional designer. She's doing one is on comedy in L&D, which I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. But thanks again. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Take care.